Hello and welcome back to the D3 Energy live stream. Again, I'm Greg Davis, founder of D3 Energy, and this is where I talk about oil and gas and the resurgence of conventional oil and gas. So today I want to talk briefly about something that is very critical for the world's oil and gas energy future. And the headline is this: we have to go after the big oil fields, the giant oil fields. We have to get back to drilling for, exploring for, finding and developing the big conventional oil and gas fields. And here's why. So most people are concerned about the day-to-day ups and downs of oil prices, and certainly that has been the big topic since 2014 when the downturn happened. Oil prices went from $100 a barrel all the way down to $27 a barrel, and it was damaging for the oil and gas industry. Obviously, many people lost their jobs. There were many bankruptcies. And that is clearly a major issue. Oil prices, the price of oil is very important, obviously, for the development of oil and gas fields, because many of them require higher oil prices to be developed. And then a lot of news has been focused on the shale revolution, the unconventional hydraulic fracturing revolution, which obviously helped America grow its domestic oil and gas supplies significantly in the daily production. But as I've said before, still a majority of America's oil and gas production comes from conventional reservoirs, better than 50%. And worldwide, a majority of the world's oil and gas supplies comes from giant conventional oil and gas fields in the OPEC nations, South America, Africa, Canada, and it's those fields which are the base supply of the world's oil and gas. It supplies the world's demand for oil and gas. And one of the things I like to say about, and I'm not the one who invented this, but one of the things I know for sure is oil prices are going to do one thing. They're going to fluctuate. They're going to go up and down. And anybody who tells you they know which way it's going to go is only speculation. Nobody knows. But here's one thing that we do know, that world oil consumption, world oil demand is going up. And just recently, I'll give you a few statistics. Just recently, the International Energy Administration just put out its forecast for energy consumption from today through 2040. And 2040 is not that far out. We're only talking about 23 years, 22 years from now. And oil energy consumption is going up significantly in all areas. And certainly renewables, solar, wind, electric power is coming up. The amount of solar, wind, electric power, electric vehicles, that supply is growing, and that demand is growing as well. But it is still projected, while all those are growing, that oil and natural gas and hydrocarbon-based fuels will supply 75% of the world's energy needs. So 75% of the world's need for, energy supply is going to come from oil, natural gas liquids. And that means we have to continue, because the total energy demand is growing. And while these other resources, the renewables, which I am all for, and what many people may not realize is the oil and gas industry is for all sources, but I am all for those resources, and I think it's fantastic that we have more electric vehicles today. I'd like to see more natural gas powered vehicles, but the renewables are going to grow, the supply, the demand is growing, but even so, the demand for petroleum-based products, hydrocarbon-based products, in the future, it's growing, is still going to be 75% of that total energy picture. And so this recent report came out saying we're going to need oil and gas for many decades to come. So, and right now, the world consumes about 98 million barrels of oil per day. And it is projected that the world in 2040 will be consuming 110 million barrels of oil per day. So somewhere between today and 2040, we've got to fill a 12 million barrel gap in oil supply, daily oil supply. That's 12 million barrels of oil per day that is going to be needed. Now, we cannot get all of that oil and gas from hydraulic fracturing, from unconventional resources. Certainly America can maintain its need and its supply by developing those resources. And as I've argued here, we've also got to bring up America's conventional oil and gas supply. And it's coming, because we're going to need it. But the world is going to need another 12 million barrels of oil per day. And those are going to come mainly from conventional oil and gas. Because while unconventional oil and gas is a major supplies a major amount of America's daily oil and gas, unconventional, from hydraulic fracturing, the world still relies on the major oil and gas fields. And the fields in Saudi Arabia, the OPEC nations, many of those fields are on the decline. In fact, there was just recently a report about a couple of the major oil and gas fields in Saudi Arabia, which is the largest producer, OPEC producer. Those fields are going to undergo maintenance because they're having issues with water production and corrosion. So they're going to need to refurbish those fields. And those fields have been on production, many of them for 30, 40, 50 years. And they're not finding new ones. So, and consumption of natural gas, the other hydrocarbon-based fuel, annually is about 120 trillion cubic feet is 120 trillion cubic feet of gas annually. So the world consumes 120 trillion cubic feet of natural gas annually. That's today. That is growing to 203 trillion cubic feet per day. So another 80 trillion, not per day, per year, but another 80 trillion cubic feet of gas annually is going to be needed. So we're going to need to find the giant oil fields and the giant natural gas fields. Now, how does this relate to oil prices and gas prices? So with the recent downturn, starting in 2014, about 27 billion barrels of conventional oil and gas projects around the world have been canceled. That would have brought on about 3 million barrels of oil per day. Now, these are giant projects in Africa, the Deepwater Gulf of Mexico, Canada, and other parts of the world, in the Far East, Vietnam. But due to lower oil prices, those projects that would have brought on about 3 million barrels of oil per day have been canceled, or they're put on hold, let's say, okay, until oil prices come back up. And many of those projects need anywhere from 7 to 10 years of development. And the total amount of capital needed for those projects was about $170 billion. So those projects have been canceled or are delayed. So already we are seeing how this supply gap is starting to develop. And again, I am not one to sit here and say oil prices are going to go up. They are going to go up. And there could be a big supply gap, especially with this fact that oil demand is going up. Many of the big conventional oil projects that provide these large volumes of supply every day, every year, are being put on hold. There's a very good chance that we will see a supply crunch, a supply gap, and thus leading to higher oil prices. But I'm not one to make predictions. But what I do know is the world needs more oil, and oil is still going to be 75% of the energy mix going forward for the next 22 to 23 years. Many of these big projects have been canceled, and the capital is not going to them. And we've got to get them going. Now, the other thing that has been greatly affected, so these projects that were in development that would have brought on 3 million barrels of oil production per day and brought another 27 billion barrels of oil to the world's energy supply. The other thing that has been hit is the exploration for these big oil fields that are going to fill this gap. The exploration, the finding, the developing of these new fields. And there's many of them out there to be found in the Gulf of Mexico, in Alaska, across the world, even onshore in the United States with new technologies. But that exploration effort, which is required, the research and development, building our future supplies, has been, knocked down significantly. Fewer and fewer companies are willing to go spend the money to go find these new oil and gas reserves. And who's going to find those? The conventional oil and gas industry. These are not shale resources. These are going to be conventional oil and gas fields, what they call the big fields, the major fields. That's going to be found by the oil finders, the men and women today, the companies that are willing to take some risk, that have foresight, have forethought, are looking ahead to see, to go find those fields, and then when they find them, to develop them. But it's coming. But we need it. We need it badly because, again, we have this supply gap which is coming, which most likely will lead to supply crunches. And we could see some big fluctuation in oil and gas prices, some big ups and some downs. And again, not predicting prices here, but what I do know is that we need that supply, and it's going to come from the big conventional oil and gas fields. So, that's my wisdom for the day. I do appreciate you taking time to be with me today, with us. Thank you for joining the community that is bringing about this resurgence in conventional oil and gas, this paradigm shift. Please share this with your friends. Let's get this dialogue going, this conversation, keep it going. We have to go after the big conventional oil and gas fields today. And again, it's going to be those professionals, those people in our industry who still know how to do that. A lot of the people with the gray hairs. And I want to say thank you very much. Have a great day, and we will see you next time. Again, please share these videos and help build this community and this resurgence of conventional oil and gas. Thank you.